Thank you for joining us for this webinar. This is Lama Tantrapa, and I'm really thrilled that you took the time to join us for this event today. This is exciting because today we're going to explore the practice of standing meditation. I understand that you are a busy person, just like all of us, and you probably have a lot of important things that you would rather do than to hang out with me on the internet. But you also know that standing meditation can provide you amazing benefits, and these benefits would include potentially developing greater sense of balance, both emotional, energetic, and physical balance, greater sense of well-being, and developing sense of centeredness so that you are more resilient no matter whatever life throws your way. You are not knocked off your feet. You also develop greater sense of connection to the ground and energetic flow between your body and Mother Earth. That's what we call being grounded, right? There is also the sense of energy flow through your body that you can develop and feel on a regular basis. This is also a potentially spiritually enlightening experience, and that can be a more and more enlightening experience that has a cumulative effect. So it's not that you're going to become enlightened today as a result of taking this particular webinar, but you can step on the path of enlightenment. And this is something that I always maintain as my constant aspect of my teachings, is that we're not on the journey to enlightenment. We are on the journey of enlightenment. This is something that I will delve deeper today, and also will continue exploring with you in our further programs. But the idea is really simple, that enlightenment is not an event that you once reach, and once and for all, you're enlightened. After the most profound awakenings, we all have tendency to fall asleep again. And even those people who claim to be enlightened, often they are enlightened in one aspect of their life and completely asleep in another aspect or other aspects. And so what happens is that there are degrees of enlightenment, degrees of awakening. We are not just going to awaken 100% once and for all. Most likely, we are going to experience an awakening that will lead to a greater sense of spiritual awareness. And then if we take advantage of this momentum, we catch the ride, so to speak. We continue going with the flow of that awakening process, becoming more awake and more enlightened. And sometimes we may also slide back. So it's okay to experience sometimes less awakening, as long as you remember that you are on the path of enlightenment. So in other words, you know there are certain steps. And if you take these steps, they will lead you to where you want to be. Now, where do people want to be when they begin their journey, when they start meditating? Most people, when they begin their meditation practice, they want to experience enlightenment, or at least they want to experience a greater sense of spiritual aliveness and well-being. That also often means that they would be less stressed out. It also often means that they would experience greater sense of ease in their body, as opposed to disease. How do you know that the person has achieved the benefits of meditation? Most likely, they are less reactive. They are much more responsive to life. Often people who are experienced meditators also develop greater sense of mind-body connection or integration, which means they're not feeling like they're falling apart. Why do people feel like they're falling apart? It's because the different parts of themselves are not working together. They're pulling in their respective directions. It's like there are certain compartmentalized aspects of their consciousness and that manifest in the physical body that pull in different directions. They have different desires or different values or different motivations, and they literally feel like there's struggle within themselves. This struggle is something that we also learn to overcome. In other words, we don't have to experience this constant state of anxiety or internal warfare. We can actually find inner peace. And our meditation that we're going to explore today will directly lead to experiencing greater sense of inner peace. What else do you experience as a result of continuous meditation practice? Well, in a sense, it's very much like awakening in a dream that we call our daily life. Imagine that this is a big dream. And as a result of meditation practice, you may actually find yourself becoming more lucid in this dream. Being awake in this dream called life is bona fide enlightenment. What are the qualities of that enlightenment? Well, just like in a dream, you begin to recognize everybody around you, every character that you encounter in your life as a dream character. What's the quality of a dream character? They're not separate from you. They're actually a projection of your own mind, the mind that is dreaming up this particular dream experience. This means that these entities that we encounter in our dreams, so-called dream characters, are actually part of our own consciousness that is dreaming them up. Now, what's interesting is that you're not consciously dreaming them up that way. You're not consciously externalizing certain qualities of yourself and projecting it on others. But that's what we often do unconsciously. We unconsciously perceive certain qualities of ourselves within others, and often develop certain judgments or project values upon the people's qualities of our attitudes based on our own qualities and attitudes that we've developed within ourselves, consciously or unconsciously. And so what happens is that we learn how to become more awake. That gives us both a deep understanding of others, because we no longer feel compartmentalized or separated from them. We actually begin to understand from within what they're experiencing, and also greater sense of compassion. What could be a better way to develop compassion than to realize that you are one with the person who you experience compassion towards? So this is the bona fide path of becoming more compassionate, develop greater understanding of everyone and everything around you, and also recognizing that the events in this dream that we call our daily life, just like in a dream at night, can be perceived as profound learning opportunities. Pretty much every shamanic culture in the world that I'm familiar with uses dreams as certain metaphors or certain learning opportunities to learn whatever we can from spirit or from dream being, as they call it, the source of our dream. That is creating the dreams for us, that we essentially dream up from within, but it's also the dream being that is dreaming up our whole dream called daily life. And then we realize that the dream being is not just somewhere within ourselves, it's at the center of the universe. And where is the center of your universe? Well, that's going to be a Zen koan for you. Where is the center of your universe? That's where the dream comes from. And if you connect with that center and step into that center, that's being centered. That's being really awake. Because then you no longer identify with just a dream character, a creature within your dream. You identify with the creator of the dream, the dreamer of this whole dream that you call a daily life. Now that's profound. That's the most powerful and empowered way to be, isn't it? That's something that we'll also explore through our practice of meditation. Now, we already covered some of the elements that we're going to be talking today about in our previous webinars on breathing and stance. We were looking mostly at the Wuji stance, or similar stance to what we will be using in our standing meditation. Sometimes meditation teachers and Qigong teachers and teachers of Tai Chi and similar disciplines insist on taking a posture that is more like hugging a tree. In Zhangzhuang, that is often referred to as holding a post, or I prefer the imagery of hugging a tree, but the idea is the same, essentially using arms to wrap around an imaginary tree. Well, I'm not against the idea of hugging trees. As a matter of fact, I love doing that myself. I'm an avid environmentalist. However, it's not necessary to hold arms in this position when you're meditating. Why not? Well, let me ask you. Do you need to hold any tension in your arms in order to stick them out this way? Of course, you have to hold tension. Where would you hold tension? Well, mostly in your shoulder muscles, the deltoids. Now, in order for any muscle to tense up, it needs to receive signal of contraction from central nervous system. If your central nervous system is busy sending signals of contraction to your muscles, guess what? It's not relaxed enough to enter a peaceful meditative state of consciousness. You will actually be using a wrong software on the wrong hardware. In other words, you're trying to achieve something by doing something that actually doesn't provide that type of result. If you keep doing the same thing, expecting different results, that's a sign of insanity. Now, I don't want to say that you're insane, but it's a pretty insane idea to try to meditate in a very tense physical state. So what happens to people who hold a pose like this, often the teachers also tell them to squat down, and sometimes they squat quite a bit, like, go into horse stance. Again, it requires quite a bit of tension in the legs, and arms, and shoulders. Then sometimes teachers also insist that people would tuck their tailbone. That requires even more tension, not less tension. It requires more tension because you're literally misaligning your pelvis. And sacrum, which is part of the pelvis, is also the foundation of the spine. And if your foundation of the spine is misaligned, what's the likelihood of the rest of the spine being in alignment? That's right. It's actually not going to be easy, virtually impossible, because then the spine, the bone structure of your body isn't supporting you against gravity. Well, something else will have to support you, otherwise you'll fall over. What would that be? Well, that would be your muscles. Again, it means that central nervous system has to be busy sending signals of contraction to the muscles that compensate for lack of structural support from the bones. And we know that bones don't need to tense up to do their job, to support you. Bones do their job relatively effortlessly. They don't burn energy, they don't get tired, they don't get overworked and start getting sore. Bones don't develop energy blockages as a result of tension. So, in other words, there is no redeeming quality to being tense when you're trying to meditate. What do I suggest instead? Instead, I suggest discovering for yourself what I would call a natural stance. The natural stance is something that we already explored in our previous webinar dedicated to stances. So I'll just demonstrate what it's like to take a natural stance. It's simply jumping and landing softly, soft like a kitten. Notice that even position of the arms makes a difference, whether or not your palms are this way or your palms are that way. Sometimes people say, I don't feel any difference. I say, well, just notice how softly you can land with your palms up as opposed to the palms down. There is a noticeable thud when I land with palms down, and 99% of people that I asked to do this also achieved the same results. In other words, they also land with a greater thud when their palms are down, or when you relax the arms all the way, the palms would be facing backwards. Now again, it's against an anatomical alignment of the human body. This is the back of the hand, and this is the front of the hand. So if the back of the hand is facing backwards when you stand, guess what? You're wearing your arm backwards. It's actually against the anatomical alignment of the human body. What happens when you turn your palms more forward? And you don't have to turn them perfectly forward. You can actually find the sweet spot. So it doesn't have to be perfectly forward. It doesn't have to be backwards. I'm sure that you'll find the perfect angle that works for you. And that's what I call finding what resonates with you today. Tomorrow it may be different. It may also be different from one person to another. That's why I don't teach the right pose or the right stance. Instead, I invite you to discover the stance that works for you. It's going to be much more authentic. It's going to be much more usable because that's what works for you. By definition, you can use it better than any other option. And it's also going to be subject to change. In other words, you may find that tomorrow or some other time, the angle of the alignment of the arms may be different. The distance between your feet needs to be different. The angle between your feet also may differ. I never tell people to turn the toes directly forward so that the feet would be parallel. That's kind of like a stereotypical position of the feet. If you look at most people practicing Qigong, taking Wuji stance, or most of the people that take a Tai Chi stance in the beginning and at the end of the Tai Chi forms, tend to turn the toes directly forward so that the feet would be parallel to each other. But notice that if you jump and land softly, your feet naturally will land at a different position. They will not be perfectly parallel to each other. As a matter of fact, there's going to be some angle between them. I'm not going to tell you what that angle should be because I don't know what it should be for you. But I invite you to discover what angle works best for you. How would you know that works best? Well, you feel most stable. If you have a friend or a practice partner, you may even invite your practice partner to test your stability by gently pushing you around. Not just from the front, but also from behind, from different angles, side to side, different parts of the body. If for example, you're stuck in the head, which is kind of like a ubiquitous condition that most people tend to get themselves into in the modern information age. Getting stuck in the head is often associated with tension in the neck and shoulders. If there is tension in the neck, you just push the person on the head and it's easy to topple them. Why? Because the whole structure is too rigid, too stiff. If you push on the person's head, and it's like no big deal. Well, that's a totally different experience. It doesn't mean that you cannot push the person over, but it's going to be harder to push the person who is relaxed. So notice how we now begin to draw a parallel between relaxation and strength. Now, most people, and this culture in particular, tend to confuse tension for strength. They think that the more they exhibit tension, the stronger they are, which is directly opposite. It's actually in reverse. If you are more relaxed, you will be stronger. Because if somebody pushes you, you will respond instead of reacting. Now, what is the difference between responding and reacting? It's very simple. Responding is being more like water. If you're stiff and rigid, and I come over and push you, I'll be able to easily push you over because you are too rigid. So just a little effort will actually affect the entire structure. But if you are relaxed and more like water, imagine I have a water balloon. I put the water balloon on a table or on the kitchen counter and try to push it over. It's not going to go anywhere. The water will slosh around. Why? Because water doesn't get compressed. You press on the water on the balloon, and it will redistribute the pressure in all 360 degrees, and actually in 3D. So it's not going to affect the location where the water balloon is. you're just going to slosh the water around. Well, similarly, if you're like water, you are going to redistribute the pressure everywhere. When that happens, you're not going to get easily pushed over. In order to begin this kind of test, I usually recommend testing the stomach. So if you ask your practice partner or your friend to push you, you can start with the stomach. Once you've learned how to become relaxed in your stomach muscles, in your abs, then it will become easier to translate this level of relaxation to other parts of the body. You will use this part of the body as the role model. If you have a hard time relaxing your abs, that means that you are not in a natural stance. Because in the natural stance, you will have an easy time releasing tension in your abs. Why? Because you are resting on the bone structure of your skeleton. You are not struggling against gravity. Now, what happens in terms of meditation is that your central nervous system will be much more relaxed. And that will make it a lot easier for you to enter a meditative state of consciousness. By meditative state of consciousness, I mean the state of consciousness that doesn't require thinking in order to be present, to know what you're experiencing. So once again, meditative state of consciousness, at least according to my definition, and some meditation teachers may have different definition of meditation. According to my definition, it's a state of consciousness that doesn't require thinking in order to comprehend your experiences. Now, how is it possible? Most of us never quit thinking. From the moment we wake up in the morning till the moment when we go to sleep at night, most of us tend to think incessantly. Now, it's not that we are stuck in this way of being forever. It's totally possible to switch thinking off. And today I will share with you a very simple practice. As a matter of fact, if you attended my previous webinars, I introduced this practice in that webinar dedicated to breathing. I will reintroduce it today in case you didn't have a chance to watch that webinar all the way through. This is the practice that will allow you to literally flip a switch at will. Whenever you don't want to think, you know how to push the reset button in your mind. It doesn't mean that you will never think again. You will begin thinking sooner or later. As a matter of fact, for people who are not trained in this type of meditation technique, thinking begins within a few seconds, maybe even split second. With practice, you can make it longer. You can make it last minutes. I can literally turn my thinking off and not think for hours. It's not that it's important to practice meditation for hours. As a matter of fact, this is one of the myths that I promised to bust. And I am actually going to bust it right now. It is not important to spend a long time meditating. Why? Because more is not always better. As a matter of fact, I believe that once you develop the skill that allows you to turn your thinking off, you will not need to spend a long time meditating, because those people who practice meditation for hours, or at least for an hour, have to do this because it takes them this long to turn their thinking off. They literally spend most of the time daydreaming while they're sitting and meditating, or standing and meditating. It doesn't matter whether you're standing or sitting. If your mind is busy thinking, that means you're not really meditating. Even if you're thinking that you're meditating, it means you're not really meditating because your mind is busy thinking. So what happens when we begin our meditation practice? We'll learn how to turn this process of thinking off, or at least temporarily pause it. Rest assured, you will start thinking again. And it's just a matter of practice to make this pause last longer. And what happens is that once the pause is over, in other words, your mind begins to think again, it will also allow you to accomplish another amazing feat that literally leads to the ultimate goal of meditation, which is spiritual awakening. When your mind begins to think after this pause, you will find yourself much more capable of recognizing what's going on, recognizing the true nature of that mental process, which is a dream. Because whenever you start thinking about something, most likely you will be thinking either about what happened in the past, or what you think is going to happen in the future, or whatever you don't want to happen in the future, as many people tend to think. Often they don't know what they want, but they know really well what they don't want. Either way, thinking about the past or the future is a form of a daydream, right? Even when you're thinking about the present time, often you may be daydreaming still, because you may be thinking about what is going on elsewhere rather than here and now. Or you may be thinking what another person is thinking. Or you may be thinking about things on a global scale, or perhaps on a microscopic scale. Either way, all of these are examples of another form of a daydream. So as you can see, it's really hard to think and not daydream. As a matter of fact, we could literally equate thinking to daydreaming, because whenever you're thinking, most likely you're not present. Whenever that happens, most likely you are daydreaming. So then, instead of trying to suppress daydreams or get rid of thinking process, instead of trying to get rid of this natural process of daydreaming that happens to most of us all the time, we learn how to accept it. That's right. If you've done some meditation before, or perhaps you're a meditation teacher yourself, you're probably thinking, what is he talking about? This is a crazy Lama who's talking about accepting that which everybody says we need to get rid of. Well, guess what? If you can beat them, join them. If you cannot beat your dreaming, because it's the natural process that happens in everybody's consciousness all the time, join it. See how you can become a connoisseur of your dreaming. As a matter of fact, learn how to become awake to the true nature of what's happening. This is what we call becoming lucid. Becoming aware of the fact that you're dreaming. Now, we're not concerned ourselves so much with the content of what you're going to dream about. Although it might be fun to talk about what you might dream up. But most importantly, we're talking about the principle of recognizing that whatever you're thinking about is a form of a dream. And the process and mechanism of daydreaming is very much the same as the process and mechanism of dreaming at night. The only difference is that it's easier to become awake in a daydream. Why? Because you're not asleep. You're standing and meditating. Obviously, if you're falling asleep, you're probably going to fall over. So, if you're not asleep, but you're dreaming, what would stop you from reminding yourself that you're dreaming? If you do that, guess what's going to happen? You become lucid in your dream. Now, often people feel inadequate, or just they feel that they shouldn't be dreaming. You know, the teachers and parents and other adults often told us when we were children that we should stop daydreaming. We should concentrate on our task at hand. We should focus on what the teacher is saying. Instead of feeling inadequate if we start dreaming, we learn to cherish and celebrate each and every moment when we recognize that we are in a dream. Why? Because that is the moment of awakening. Often people tell me that when they experience this for the first time, or for the first several times, they have this amazing realization that They have never been so awake in their entire life. Now, what does it mean? It means that people live their lives half asleep. In other words, they are in a dream, but they're not even aware of the fact that they're dreaming. And that is exactly what spiritual awakening is about. It's about realizing they're dreaming. Now, when we are practicing standing meditation, we literally give ourselves a reminder that we are dreaming. How often do we need to give ourselves this reminder? Well, how about as often as you push the reset button? Now, I promised that I would share with you what that reset button is about. So let me share with you the most simple and elegant way to turn your thinking off, at least for a split second, maybe for a few seconds. Have you ever noticed that your mind cannot think for a short period of time when you yawn? That's right. Yawning is a natural meditative breath. And I will teach you right now how to facilitate your own yawning. And when you yawn, your mind will stop thinking for a moment. Now, you don't have to start telling yourself, oh, I'm not thinking, because the mere fact that you start telling yourself you're not thinking means that you're thinking at the moment. So instead, tell yourself you are dreaming whenever you start thinking again after the pause in your thinking process. So, how do you facilitate yawning? It's very contagious. It's likely that just thinking about yawning already instigated a yawn. I wonder how long it's going to take you to begin experiencing this desire to yawn. But if you don't feel the desire, we can easily start yawning by doing this. Gently bring the tip of the tongue to the roof of your mouth, thereby completing the macrocosmic orbit, completing the Dumai and Renmai, the conception and governing vessels, and at the tip of the tongue, and the other one at the roof of the mouth. So when you bring the tip of your tongue gently touching the roof of your mouth, behind your teeth, you actually complete the circuit of energy. And then just keep your mouth slightly open, but breathe through the nose. It's really tricky to breathe through the nose while keeping the mouth ajar. Don't have to keep it very wide open, just a little open. You may smile if you feel like it. Almost inevitably, you will start feeling like yawning. Then forget about keeping the tongue on top of your roof of mouth because you won't be able to. Don't worry about having to breathe through the nose. You will yawn through your mouth, and that's okay. Some people in this culture and many cultures around the world have some negative connotations, for example, that indicates that they're tired or that they're bored or they're just not polite. So they consider it not polite to yawn in front of other people. So what do people do? Well, they apologize for yawning. They feel confused and sometimes they try to cover up their mouths or clench the jaws, contributing to a TMJ disorder. Instead, we learn how to be fully accepting of yawning. As a matter of fact, facilitate it at will. When you do that, guess what's going to happen? Your mind will stop thinking for a moment, and you yawn with abandon. You allow the sigh of relief also to occur, which is a natural mantra. How do you think the people of India and Tibet and other countries like that came up with the idea of mantras? They entered a natural meditative state of consciousness that is often associated with certain vocal expression. Eventually, over time, it got acculturated. So they turned into sacred syllables, such as Om or Ha or even more complex, say Mani Padme Hum or Hare Krishna or what have you. But the idea of mantra goes back to the shamanic roots of it. And the shamans of antiquity did not chant the sacred syllables. They allowed what was natural for them to manifest and unfold spontaneously. And what could be more natural and spontaneous than yawning? It's a breath that just happens. I don't know if you noticed, but my eyes also started to water a little bit, which is a pretty clear indicator that I entered an altered state of consciousness. What was altered about it? It was the state of consciousness in which I couldn't think. I was in the meditative state. What also happened was a little bit of tension, maybe even quite a bit of tension in the beginning of the yawn. And then with exhalation comes relaxation. It's actually one of the important principles of facilitating relaxation in the body. Instead of trying to relax, we actually tense up first before relaxing. Don't tense up too much. If, for example, you're already on the verge of spasm, don't tense up so that you give yourself a cramp. But give your muscles a little bit of extra tension. Why? There is no signal that the central nervous system would send to the muscles that would tell them to relax. Instead, there is only more signals of contraction or fewer signals of contraction. So what do? We take over the responsibility for tension. Most of the time when people feel too tense, they're not doing it consciously. What does it mean? It means that they wish they would stop being tense, but they don't know how to stop doing that which they did unconsciously. Well, if you did it unconsciously, why don't you actually start doing it consciously? Because you can't stop doing that which you didn't even know that you were doing. But if you start doing it consciously, for example, as in the case of a yawn, first tension, and then relaxation. Now, how awesome is that? You actually begin to consciously be in charge of your attention. Then it's up to you. You have freedom of choice, whether to keep being more tense or less tense. That's right. It's simple as that. You literally take charge of your level of tension. Now, tension, as we already talked about it, does not contribute to meditation and entering altered states of consciousness. Often it actually impedes meditation. So what do? We use yawning for the purpose of facilitating greater relaxation too, throughout the body, globally. Now, there may also be particular areas of the body that need special attention because they're too tense. Maybe you have some injury, or maybe you have some chronic issue associated with that tension, or perhaps you just have a holding pattern of tension. Actually, in my first book, The Art of Being in the Flow, I wrote about holding patterns that are associated with particular states of consciousness. In the sense, they are somatic manifestations of different states of consciousness. So different states manifest in the physical body in the form of different holding patterns. If you want to dig deeper into the subject matter, I definitely would encourage you to buy my book or perhaps the whole home study course on my website at qigoncoaching.com. And what happens when we begin the practice of standing meditation is we learn how to release undue tension or unnecessary tensions by taking a natural stance, perhaps yawning a few times. And then there is also another important practice that I would like to introduce to you. It's called centering practice or centering exercise. What is it like to be centered? Well, as the name implies, being centered means has something to do with the center. Center of what? Well, I mentioned the center of the universe a few minutes ago. How do we take the baby step towards discovering the center of the universe and aligning our center with the center of the universe as we know it? Well, first of all, we need to know where our center is. The center of our body is somewhere in the middle. There is a particular term in Oriental medicine, and it's called the central channel. And Tai Chi is referred to as the Tai Chi pole, or basically it's the vertical plumb line that goes from the top of the head along the spine and down into the perineum, the area between the anus and the genitals, and keeps going straight down towards the center of planet Earth. If it's a vertical plumb line, it will reach the center of planet Earth. If it's not vertical, in other words, instead of plumb line, you have some crooked line or slanted one way or another, well, it will not reach the center of Mother Earth. Why is it important to reach the center of Mother Earth? Because that's the center of gravity field that we swim in, that we have to reckon with all the time. So if you want to experience centeredness, first, let's begin by visualizing the plumb line, or the vertical axis of your body that goes from the top of your head down along the spine, through perineum, and all the way down to the center of planet Earth. Now, some people don't know where the top of the head is. Okay, so the top of the head is easy to find. However, many people indeed don't know where the real top of the head is. So they often concern themselves with the false top of the head, something over here. They think that this part of the head is the top of the head, which is not true. The real top of the head is further back. It's not exactly where the fontanelle is, where the babies have soft spot, but it's real close. How would you find it? Well, just grab a hold of your ears, both ears, and gently pull straight upwards towards the ceiling, away from the center of planet Earth. So go towards the zenith with your ears. What's cool about it is that the ears are located directly beneath the top of the head. And so when you pull straight up, it will actually align your head. Notice how I'm a little bit taller now than I was just a moment ago. Why? Because I was demonstrating the false top of the head, and it actually makes you shorter. And as soon as you pull by the tips of the ears and bring the real top of the head on top, you become taller. Isn't that cool? You become taller not because you stretch your neck. No, it's because the head is not a perfect ball. And so when you bring the real top of the head on top, actually the oblong shape of the skull is in alignment with the bone structure of the neck, called cervical spine. The bones within the neck support the head. The weight of the head in most people's cases is close to the weight of a bowling ball, 10, 12 pounds. It's quite a bit of weight. If the head is not resting on the neck's bones, on the cervical spine, something else has to compensate for the lack of that structural support. What would that be? The neck muscles. Remember in the beginning of this webinar, I mentioned that people often have tendency to be stuck in the head. Well, this is one of the ways people get stuck in their heads. Because if you develop neck muscle tension, it will prevent energy from flowing freely. And that actually will make you stuck. Most people don't get stuck in their bodies, they get stuck in the noggin. The simple explanation of the energetic nature of the condition being stuck in the head. That many people experience in their lives almost every day. Now, also it's associated with overthinking. That's what meditation is for, right? So let's continue our exploration of standing meditation and dig a little bit deeper into the understanding of our center. So the central channel that I was talking about, that goes from the top of the head, we already know where the top of the head is. Now, let's bring 100% of our attention to that axis of our body. Now, why do I call it axis? Because we can turn from side to side around this axis, just like the axis of a wheel, or in Tibet there are prayer wheels on the vertical axis. So you can push them and they will spin either one way or the other way. What I would invite you to do is to imagine yourself being like that prayer wheel on the vertical axis, pivoting from side to side. Now, what's interesting about this maneuver, it's not the same as what many Tai Chi and Qigong teachers suggest to their students when they invite them to do this with their hands. Slap themselves silly with their hands. Sometimes they even go up the back towards the kidneys and adrenal glands. It's not about hitting yourself. It's about pivoting around the axis. So different objective altogether. Most interesting thing happens with the feet. My feet pivot on the heel of a weight-bearing foot. Turn to the right, I pivot on the right foot. There is a little bit more weight on the right foot as I pivot on its heel. Then I turn forward, and I turn the left foot to the left, pivoting on its heel. And then I turn it back, and again, pivot to the right, and then to the left. The principle of stabilization is in place. What's the principle of stabilization? It's the principle that suggests that the center line of the body is in alignment with the toes of the weight-bearing foot. Where's the center line on my body? Well, pretty much where my navel is pointed, or lower dantian. Whenever I turn to my right, I want to track the direction of my center line with the toes on my right foot. I will not turn much farther than 90 degrees, so I only go this far. But then I turn 90 degrees again forward, and then I turn 90 degrees in the opposite direction, which gives me actually 180 degrees turn. So if I'm facing north, then I will be turning east and west. And whenever I turn to the left, the toes of my left foot are tracking. Then I start turning towards the front, my toes turn forward, and then I start shifting the weight again onto my right foot. It's not a significant shift, literally just 1% or 2% of extra weight on the pivoting heel. Why do we want to have more weight on the heel that we pivot on? Because it will make us stable. How do I know that? I have practice partners. I have students who I invite to push me. When I pivot like this, another person, or sometimes even more than one person, may try to push me over. And what happens? Just like with a prayer wheel. You push the prayer wheel and it's going to turn. Which direction is it going to turn in? Well, whichever direction you're pushing it in. So it's the matter of energy projection. If there is an energy flowing towards me from my student or from my practice partner, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to feel where the energy is flowing. If I don't feel it without physical contact, fine. I can wait till the physical contact occurs, and then I will turn in the direction wherever the energy is flowing. If the energy is flowing to my right, guess where I'm going to turn? To my right. If the energy is flowing to my left, where I'm going to turn? To my left. That's right. So in order to be able to do this, we actually need to do the centering exercise just to get the sense of what it's like to be fully centered. Centered is like being a spinning top. That's what provides the spinning top, the stability, being centered. If there is any eccentricity, in other words, the weight of the spinning top more on one side and less on the other side, it's going to spin off into oblivion. But as long as the spinning top is in alignment with a vertical axis, and this line goes all the way down to the center of planet Earth, it's going to be stable. And similar to the spinning top, we also learn how to pivot. We don't spin around all the way, but we pivot from side to side, allowing arms to just relax and flop around freely. No concern about hitting yourself with your hands whatsoever. Instead, you just let the hands flop. They will touch the opposite hips to the right hand will probably go towards the left hip. The left hand will probably go towards the right hip. That's quite okay. But the idea is that we are not doing anything other than focusing our attention on the center around which we're pivoting. Most of the weight of the body, especially the most dense parts of the body, are around the back. Unless you're pregnant or you have big beer belly, you may have more weight towards the front. But otherwise, the densest parts of the body are bones. And that obviously is the backbone, hence the name. Shoulder blades are also towards the back. Most of the weight of the chest cavity is towards the back. Pelvic bowl is mostly towards the back. So as you can see, there is more weight towards the back. That means that when we pivot, we don't pivot around the axis that is close to the stomach. That's what people sometimes do in many Tai Chi schools that I visited. They pivot and they sink their weight onto the back foot. You don't want to be caught on your back foot. There's an English expression, being caught on the back foot. Well, if you don't want to be caught on your back foot, don't shift the weight on that foot. Where's your weight? Just a little bit more on the front foot. That's right, on the heel of the front foot. That heel that's pivoting. And it's okay to pivot on the weight-bearing heel. It's not much more weight than 50%, maybe 51, 52%, that's it. But there's a little bit more weight on that foot. What happens? You become very, very stable. If you shift the weight onto the back foot, somebody comes over and can easily push you over. If your weight is slightly more towards the front, somebody comes over, tries to push you, you're not easily pushed over. And if you pay attention to the direction of the energy, then you may even go with that energy. That's what we call going with the flow. Going with the flow allows you to be in the flow. You can't be in the flow if you're going against the flow. So you have to go with the flow. Then you enjoy the ride. You literally start experiencing greater sense of wellness and well-being. You also discover for yourself that you don't have to take anything personally. Even if somebody's trying to push you, no big deal. Don't take it personally. Instead of taking things on face value on the surface of our skin, so to speak, we delegate this issue to our center. When you become centered, you take nothing personally anymore. And you become responsive instead of reactive. By responding, you feel the flow energy and you go with the flow instead of reacting, which means, by definition, reaction means going against the oncoming forces. So there's an oncoming force. If you tense up and go against it, that's exactly what we call a reaction, a reactivity. If you respond, you just simply let the energy turn you. It may even help you breathe. That's right. Sometimes the person pushes and it just expels the air out of my lungs. Great. I don't mind. Help. Now, what happens also is that you enter the state of consciousness. That is a psychological reflection of the state of being centered. We call it state of equanimity. Equanimity means you don't have attachments and you don't have aversions. Now, what does it mean to be not attached? Does it mean that you're completely aloof? No. Does it mean that you have no interest in anything? Not at all. I'm a very curious person, but I'm free from attachments. I'm a very inquisitive and scientifically minded person, but I don't have judgments as to what's good and what's bad. As a matter of fact, it's very much in alignment with scientific approach to accumulating knowledge. If you don't judge things as good and bad, you may actually learn a few things. If you just judge everything in this polarized black and white fashion, you already figured everything out. You already know what's good and what's bad. And you just need to stick with the good and run away from bad, or get rid of it somehow. Well, the funny thing is that if you could get rid of bad, where would it go? If you're one with the universe, there's nowhere for the bad stuff to go. And if you're one with the universe, you also realize that everything is relative. It's like yin and yang aspects of energy. Then you just need to find balance between them. In other words, you accept them fully, and then you explore and find how you can harmonize these seemingly polarized types of energy. In our next webinar, I will actually introduce an amazing meditation practice that will allow you to harmonize whatever incompatible ideas you may have. Or often people say, you know, I don't like the way I am, I want to be that way. Or I want to live my dream like this, but the way I'm living now, oh, it sucks. So in other words, the current state of affairs and dream states are two very different ways of being, associated with polarized ways of energy. Well, what happens is we have a wonderful energy harmonizing exercise that helps us find harmony and peace in this type of situation. Today, we'll go into a deeper understanding of standing meditation. And when we go into meditation in our standing position, after doing a little centering exercise, I can guarantee that you will find yourself going deeper and having easier time meditating. When you start pivoting, how do you know when to stop? If you watch your breath, you'll notice that after a number of pivots from side to side, you will have either a sigh of relief, or you will yawn, or notice the change in your breathing pattern. You may start feeling like breathing deeper and smoother. Why? Because when you find the center of your body, remember it's next, right by the spine, your weight begins to rest on your bone structure. The central nervous system then doesn't have to send so many signals to the muscles to contract, which includes the breathing muscles, the diaphragm and obliques and intercostals and abs. So it literally allows you to breathe easier. That's one of the reasons why I often don't even need to teach people how to breathe. I just help them relieve their tensions, and then they naturally start breathing easier. When it happens, a wonderful thing occurs. They actually become less stressed. So equanimity, being centered, goes hand in hand with being physically centered, resting your weight on the bone structure of your body, on the skeleton. Energetically centered, so you develop a sense of where your central channel or Tai Chi pole is. Taking nothing personally, and that state of equanimity manifests as equipoise. What's equipoise? It's basically natural stance. It's the way of being that is balanced and elegant and aligned that requires the least amount of tension and allows energy to flow freely through the entire organism. Again, instead of manipulating energy to push it, to direct it where we think it should flow, we actually learn how to stop impeding the flow of chi in our bodies by learning how to stop being so tense. When we stop obstructing the flow of chi, it flows freely. Energy knows exactly where to flow. It doesn't need to be told because it flows naturally where the laws of nature guide it. And we may not even understand all the laws of nature, especially as they pertain to the flow of chi. So instead of trying to direct the flow of chi where we think is the right direction or right path, we actually begin to trust that energy will find the most natural, the most effective flow following its natural course. And what can be healthier than being natural? So you literally allow yourself to regain health by getting out of the way. Now that is what happens as a result of practicing the standing and meditation. But how do we practice it? Well, let's take a natural stance, but just jumping and landing softly. You don't have to jump high, and you don't have to land with a thud. Slightly bending the knees may allow you to check whether or not your knees are pointing where your toes are pointing. Ideally, they would be pointing where toes are pointing. Remember, not necessarily forward. They may be rotated slightly outwards in relation to the center line. But keeping the knees pointing in the same direction where the toes are pointing will keep the entire structure of the leg in one geometrical plane. The upper leg, the lower legs, and the foot are in alignment. That means the leg can actually support you with ease. If there is some crookedness, for example, knees are pointing one way, toes are pointing slightly differently, there is misalignment. That means bones of the leg are not supporting you with ease. You have to compensate that lack of structural integrity by tensing up the muscles, which means you will be compromised. And your central nervous system will be busy sending signals of contraction to your muscles. Well, that's not going to be easy to enter a relaxed meditative state then. But if you allow yourself to just take a natural stance, jumping and landing softly, and then pivot from side to side a few times. How long? Till you start noticing a change in your breathing pattern, or you yawn, or have a sigh of relief. Again, sigh of relief, that's a pretty clear indication you become more relaxed. Just like this. It's going to happen. How soon it's going to happen, I'm not going to promise you, but within seconds, usually, for most people, you will start feeling like, wow, I'm actually more centered. Then you just simply come to full stop. And you may also remind yourself where the top of your head is. You may simply allow yourself to yawn if you haven't yawned yet. If you have already yawned, I can guide you through a simple guided meditation practice. I will literally walk you step by step through the process of connecting with the power of Mother Earth. We become more grounded. And as we connect with Mother Earth, we also develop this sense of energy flowing through the body with ease. You can keep your eyes slightly closed or half closed. With this level of relaxation, you simply bring 100% of your attention to the center of your body. And notice how the weight is distributed on the centers of both of your feet in a way that the pressure would need to be distributed on the suction cups if you want suction cups to stick to the surface wherever you want it to stick. As the weight is distributed on the centers of your feet, and the feet become like suction cups. You may even visualize that you are in a beautiful place in nature. Let's imagine going for a journey into the forest. You may imagine yourself being surrounded by ancient trees. You can imagine connecting with the energies of different trees. Some of them may resonate with you better than others. So take a moment to imagine connecting with the energy of one of the trees that resonates the best with you. You may even give it a hug, feeling the rough surface of the bark of the tree with your hands. Imagine what it would be like to be the tree, growing on one and the same place for hundreds, if not thousands of years, providing shelter to many generations of birds and animals and insects, being washed by the rains, being moved by the winds. Imagine what it's like to experience different seasons, standing on one and the same spot for many, many years, growing deep roots in the ground, connecting you with Mother Earth. Imagine your roots growing deeper and deeper and deeper through different layers of topsoil and dirt and rocks and underground waters, all the way to magma, and even through the magma to the center of planet Earth. That's right. Imagine your roots growing all the way down to the center of planet Earth until they connect with the energy center of our planet. Once your roots connect with the energy center in the middle of planet Earth, the energy of Earth element may begin to stream up the roots into your trunk and branches, providing each and every cell of your body with nourishment and support, empowering and invigorating each and every organ and system of your body. At the same time, you may also allow any energies you no longer need to flow back to the center of planet Earth, allowing Mother Earth to recycle these energies and make them usable again. You may receive as much energy as you need at this particular moment in your life, directly from Mother Earth. And let go of anything that you're ready to let go of. You may not even have any judgments or labels as to what is it that you're letting go of. You simply allow the energy you no longer need to flow freely out of your body into the earth, all the way down to the center of it, where it can be transformed and become usable again by you and by everyone else who connects with the center of our planet. Take your time to fully recharge and fully let go of anything that you no longer need to hold on to. The energy flow may be so powerful that you may start feeling tingling sensations in your feet or ankles or legs or other parts of your body. Just allow this tingling sensation to spread throughout the entire organism, rejuvenating and awakening each and every cell of your body. As you are standing like a tree, remember what it's like to be a tree, letting the wind move your branches, swaying in the wind. You don't need to be rigid or stiff, or supple and elegant. Only when you feel that you have received all the necessary energy that you need at this moment in your life from Mother Earth, you may begin retracting your roots from the center of planet Earth, going back through different layers of magma and rocks, underground waters, and dirt, back into your feet as you're regaining human shape and form, but still remembering what it's like to be a tree, remembering what it's like to be fully grounded and rooted and centered. Notice we did not take a long time to perform this meditation practice. Remember, I mentioned that more is not necessarily better, or at least in terms of the length of time. It doesn't take very long to experience this meditation and the benefits of it. However, if you would like to experience more of these benefits, you can add more of these meditation practices in your day. I would definitely encourage you to practice this at least once a day, preferably in the morning, before you start your day, so that you set yourself up for the day. The location for this practice ideally would be relatively quiet, so that there would be few distractions, comfortable temperature, no noises, or at least limited amount of noise. You may play some music. As a matter of fact, you may enjoy my guided meditations from my meditation CD, Qidao Initiation, which has the most amazing background music. I don't know if you hear it right now, but I'm actually playing it for you right at this particular moment. And hearing this music may also trigger certain memory of meditation. Another thing that also sometimes triggers meditation is sensing the smell of something that you've developed association with. For example, being a Buddhist monk and a Lama, I spent years meditating in different temples and monasteries. Most of them had incense burning. Guess what? Every time I smell incense, even though I don't live in a monastery nowadays, but every time I smell incense, it triggers memory of meditation. And memory creates the state. So just like we say that memory is state dependent, in other words, it's easy to remember things when you enter the same state of consciousness that you were in when you were memorizing these things. It also works in reverse. If you recall certain memory by, for example, smelling the smell associated with that memory, it also triggers the state. Now, in this case, we're talking about meditative state, or Qigong state, if you will. These are very related states of consciousness, Qigong state and meditative state. The meditation, as I mentioned, is the state of consciousness that doesn't require thinking in order to be aware of your experience. Qigong state, by my definition, is the state of consciousness in which you can perceive the flow of qi and be in flow. Very closely related to states of consciousness that go hand in hand. That's also why I practice meditation and I practice Qigong. Now, one of the things that I wanted to share with you today before we complete our webinar is a relatively novel discovery that I arrived to just a few years ago. And that was the discovery that many people spontaneously experience meditation in their lives without even knowing that they experience meditation. It happens to most people when they take a shower, whether it's in the morning, evening, or at night, or whatever time of the day you take a shower at. Being alone with at least number of distractions around you. Nobody is talking to you, hopefully. You are not bombarded with the onslaught of information on the internet or elsewhere. Most likely, you're smelling pleasant smells. For example, I use sandalwood soap, so it definitely reminds me of the meditation practices that were also associated with burning sandalwood incense. And being naked, totally natural, not trying to pretend to be somebody who you're not, and exposing yourself to the flow. In this case, we're talking about the flow of water. But you can even visualize yourself take a shower, in which case, instead of the water, you'll be experiencing the flow of energy. Anything in your visualization and your dreams is made of energy, including water. So if you visualize yourself or imagine yourself showering, you're showering with the current of energy streaming all the way from heavens and directly downwards towards the center of planet Earth. Again, the same line that we align ourselves with. And what happens? You cleanse yourself. You let go of any things that you're ready to let go of. You rejuvenate your body, perhaps providing yourself a gentle massage. You're rubbing yourself, connecting with different parts of the body, perhaps some parts that you don't connect with very often, not as often as they deserve to be given attention to. Wherever your attention goes, energy flows. So if there are any areas of the body that are sore or painful or afflicted in any way, giving them attention also provides energy, which will facilitate healing. Now, what happens in the shower? Some people get so uninhibited, they start singing. Maybe you're one of those folks who sing or hum in the shower. I do that, I admit freely. And what happens is that our inhibitions drop. We may also feel a somewhat elated state of consciousness. Again, not unlike meditation. If we just simply allow ourselves to experience meditation more fully in the shower, or imagine being in the shower and use this imagery to facilitate standing meditation. It makes it so much easier that it literally leaves no excuses for anybody to practice meditation. Now, I hope that you have no excuses anymore and you will start practicing meditation on a regular basis. I would definitely recommend a daily basis, maybe even several times a day. Personally, I practice meditation a number of times every day. Why? Because if you spread out the meditations in small increments throughout the day, guess what happens? The meditative state of consciousness starts to bleed into your daily life, infusing your daily life with the qualities of consciousness that we strive to experience as a result of meditation, making us centered and resilient and responsive throughout the day. We experience greater sense of groundedness and presence of mind and peace of mind. And remember, we were talking about connecting with people, having greater sense of compassion and deep understanding. Well, that also happens if you practice meditation on a regular basis throughout the day, several times a day. So on this note, I want to invite you to continue your journey with me. In case you haven't heard, I've pioneered the practice of Qigong coaching and Tai Chi coaching. And now I invite you to join me for a Tai Chi coaching program that will include these meditation practices. It will include the practices of movement, dynamic practices of energy awareness, and we will not do forms. I promise you. You will accomplish more benefits with less effort without forms. Why? Because when you focus on form, you focus on the external appearance of your practice. What we will learn is how to focus on the inner essence of the practice, which is the ability to feel the flow of qi and be in the flow. We will do that through this series of bi-weekly webinars like this. So every other week, I will actually conduct a webinar. On alternating weeks, I'll also offer you additional video materials. So you will never go without some kind of practice. I will also keep tabs on how well your practice is going and provide you additional support if necessary in form of group coaching. So during these webinars, we will have group coaching calls when people will be able to come online and share their experiences. And we will have a limited number of people in the group. And I can actually have a face-to-face chat in this type of environment in the webinar. You can also send me emails during the week if you run into some challenges, and I'll be happy to coach you through those challenges. In order to find out more about this program, I will redirect you to the web page with information about this program. And guess what? I invite you to try it. The first month for just $1. If you really like it, if you feel that this is what really gives you the benefits you're looking for, then you'll be able to continue through the rest of the 6-month program with only $99 payment for the further 5 months. But the first month is only $1. And guess what? I offer a 30 days guarantee. So if you do not like it for any reason, I can refund you this $1. So there's no reason for you not to give it a try. I look forward to working with you. Namaste.